Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to Vlog 83. What if Bill Shankly was your supervisor? Now, this is an odd title to a great request for a vlog that I received from Michelle. She's a great friend of the Office of Graduate Research. We have the wonderful Michelle, 1L, in social sciences, and Michelle with 2 L's in nursing and health sciences. And Michelle with 2 L's asked a particular series of requests of me that I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks. She sent me an email asking how in a PhD program you can balance all the conflicting responsibilities that are enacted upon you, from family and friends, yes, but also managing part-time teaching and marking while doing a PhD. So she particularly asked how you can remain motivated in your life with basically life swirling around you. So Michelle, I've been thinking about how to answer your question. In fact, your email's been sitting next door to me at my home office on my desk to think about how I could best address this query for you. And I'm actually going to address it in 2 separate vlogs, this one and the next one. So in the next vlog, which I've already written, I'm going to introduce a technique to you, a strategy really, called compartmentalization. And that will provide some concrete advice to explore how we separate out the personal and the professional, the family and the PhD, so compartmentalisation. But before we get to that key technique, I think, I need to do one other little bit of work, and that's what we're going to do in this vlog today. You asked in your email, Michelle, how do we make sure that the PhD stays fresh for you? How do you create what you described as a successful mindset? So I really liked that word mindset, and I've been playing with it this week. So what I want to do today is summon a very unusual source from popular culture and sport indeed to think about how we create that winning, that successful mindset. And I intentionally did not want to do a vlog on motivation because I think motivation has been taken over by self-help writers. I call them in the office the believe-in achievers. You know, those people that if you just believe enough, then you're going to achieve. So keep believing and you're going to achieve. Well, you know, they're probably the people that download those inspirational memes on Facebook, often featuring like a fountain or a water feature or a mountain. And look, those memes, when you read them, you do feel a bit better for about 25 seconds, but life gets in the way. You have to be confident, you have to know that you can do a PhD, but the problem is that confidence can get knocked day upon day upon day because life happens to all of us. So in universities particularly, there's always some random person who decides to offer you feedback. You know, these people like, I just want to offer you some feedback. Do you, girlfriend? Well, they're offering feedback really in a critical and often pretty nasty way. And they're offering feedback to do 2 things. Firstly, to hurt you, and secondly, to make themselves feel a hell of a lot better. Now, in 1980s educational psychology, motivation was split between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Now, intrinsic motivation was supposedly the good stuff, you know, the personal satisfaction that comes from success. So this is this fire that burns deeply within us to be successful. And I've used fire intentionally because, of course, you can have a fire, but it's very easy to exhaust it. Bad stuff happens, and hoping that that internal fire is going to get you through those days where bad stuff seems to cascade all over you, well, that's just not going to happen. And also, I think the interpretation of extrinsic motivation in educational psychology was a little bit simplistic. That is, you know, it's really pretty bad or dodgy to do stuff for external rewards like getting a job or getting an income. Well, from my perspective, actually paying your bills is quite a good and positive thing to do for the planet. But secondly, I would argue that the separation between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation was actually flawed. That separation, that division. And also it underestimates the role of context in creating a successful research career. So what I do, and what I have done throughout my professional life, is I spend a lot of time working on my context, the context of my research, the context of my teaching, but also the context for my writing. My rule has always been, for the last 25 years, control what you can control and try to create a context around you that is positive and productive and interesting. So that, for example, is why I have a house filled with just over now 18,000 books. Quite challenging to move around the world, can I say, very difficult to pack. But the reason I have all these books and they are around me and I use them on a daily basis is because I'm 10 feet away from inspiration and aspiration at any time. So if ever I'm thinking, oh, what am I doing here? What's going on? I'm 10 feet away from a great scholar with profoundly important ideas. And that's why in both my research masters and my PhD, I chose to put my office in the library. I didn't go to the faculties or the schools or the departments. I was in the library. And I think one of the reasons that I did those qualifications so quickly, and I'm still very productive and write a great deal, is because I am surrounded by knowledge. I work on my context. So I also do a lot of work around the world on the notion of leadership, and particularly research leadership. And last week I was asked to do a presentation on research leadership, and I'm often pretty stunned, to be honest with you, about the nonsense that masquerades as leadership theory on this planet at the moment. It's well dodgy. But when I was recently asked to speak on research leadership, firstly, I wanted to make very, very clear that there is a difference between research administration, research management, and research leadership. All three are required, but all three are quite different. So I tend to be pretty horrified about the very basic nature of research leadership training that we're bestowing to you, our next generation of scholars. And I started to wonder what would happen if we'd all just sort of toughen up a bit and think more about mindsets rather than leadership. And I often wonder what would happen if Bill Shankly had been a vice-chancellor rather than a football manager. Indeed, what would happen if Bill Shankly was a PhD supervisor? Now, Bill Shankly, those of you that don't know who Bill Shankly is, how could this be? He was the famous football manager of Liverpool Football Club between 1959 and 1974. Now, when we think about Liverpool to this day as a place of excitement and energy and interest and passion, that, yes, comes from the Beatles in the 1960s, but it also comes from Bill Shankly in the 1960s. He was an inspirational man. He came from a pretty tough mining community. He had 5 brothers, all of whom played football, and he played football himself very, very well. In fact, he represented Scotland at a national level. But what's interesting to me is what happened post his playing career. Yes, he became a manager, but he worked his way through the ranks. Carlisle United, Grimsby Town, Workington, Huddersfield Town, and of course, Liverpool. So Shankly in Liverpool, particularly in the early days, he didn't have the big budgets to bring in the big players. He had to inspire players through the Liverpool ranks. And he also had to back himself. So when he saw a young player in Scunthorpe or Motherwell or the Wirral, he had to be able to see something in that person and be able to develop them as an outstanding footballer. I often think that's what we do as a great supervisor. It's pretty easy to find a pretty straightforward, a student, young man, young woman, has first class honours, went to a posh university. That's pretty easy, I think, to go, oh yes, well that person will put them in a PhD program. I try to back myself to give people second and third chances in their life. So I talk with people and I have a sense that somebody has got something special to give that might not have gone through the conventional pathway. And for me, they're the great supervisors who can pick the talent and then develop it. So if you think about it, Shankly was really Ron Barassi on steroids. He had belief, he had commitment, and that belief and commitment was unshakable. But all of that was based on a really staunch work ethic. So what I wanted to do is finish this vlog this week to create that successful mindset for you, Michelle. And I want to use some phrases from Bill Shankly to get you into that context, get you into that mindset. And yes, these are real quotes from Bill Shankly. What a legend. Quote, Football is a simple game based on the giving and the taking of passes, of controlling the ball and making yourself available to receive a pass. It is terribly simple, end of quote. Fantastic. So think about your PhD right now. Are you making it much more complicated than it actually needs to be? What are your research questions? What's your original contribution to knowledge? Have you got your ontology, your epistemology, your methodology in place? Well, cool. Just get on with it. Go for it. Don't create the borders and the barriers and the hills and the fences that are simply not required. Place one foot in front of the other, read one article after another, do your experiments, do your field work, work that archive, and just get on with it. It's a simple game. Remember, you're not fighting the Second World War, you're not writing tax law, and you're not Kim Kardashian. Just do it. 2. Some people believe that football is a matter of life and death. I'm very disappointed by this attitude. I can assure you it's much, much more important than that. End of quote. Now, when I was younger, I used to think that Bill Shankly was being ironic. Actually, as I've got older, I've realised he is being literal. Football is more important than life and death. He is right on that. But research is also the same. Think about it. Whenever you're having a bad day, think about the privilege that you have received, the privilege to do an undergraduate degree, the privilege to do a postgraduate qualification and become the best person that you can be. That's a privilege. Now, universities, no matter who knocks them, are extraordinary places. We're one of the few institutions on the planet where every day we come to work and we do something positive for the planet. So you have a chance to complete a PhD at a university. You can change the world by what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're becoming. Now that is more important than life and death. In fact, the one thing I can guarantee is that you will die. But the one thing I can guarantee is your outstanding research will transcend you, will outlive you. Make it great research. 3. A lot of football is in the mind. You must believe you are the best and then make sure that you are. In my time at Liverpool, I always said we had the 2 best teams in Merseyside. Liverpool and Liverpool reserves. End of quote. Apologies to all the Everton and Tranmere fans watching this vlog. But really, the success in your PhD does start in your head. You got to want it. You've got to believe that you can do it, but you've also got to be prepared to do the hard yakka to get yourself there. It is a commitment to yourself. It is a commitment that you become your best self. And you've got to stay in, you've got to sit in that commitment. So much of our culture, particularly in Australia at the moment, can I say, knocks the different, the distinctive, the passionate, the extraordinary. So whatever people may say to you, you have to believe that you can become the best person that you can be. So yes, you are extraordinary, but please remember, learn everything that you can. Keep your ears open, learn from the great people around you, and then you'll become that best self. Quote, a football team is like a piano. You need 8 men to carry it and 3 who can play the damn thing. End of quote. Now, so much of scholarship is lonely and it's isolating. So make sure you have a community of trustworthy supporters around you. Universities are really big and really complicated organisations. It's very easy to focus myopically almost on yourself, me, focus on yourself and your supervisors. But if you're going to play a piano, you need a whole series of people to deliver that piano to you and your supervisors. So it is important that you start to build a team around yourself. Remember how important librarians are. Librarians are the punctuation of your PhD, so make sure you've got librarians in your team. Information technology specialists can be transformative of your thesis, and know your professional staff in research administration. They can save you a lot of time. And then suddenly you realise you've got a whole team behind you who really care about your progress, because you can't play a piano if you haven't got a piano. Our final Shanklyism to take with you through the week emerged when he was talking with a Liverpool trainee. Quote, "The problem with you, son, is all your brains are in your head." End of quote. Now, we as scholars tend to think, nay, overthink just about every aspect of our lives. Yes, our research, yes, our family, yes, our friends. We overthink parking. I know I spend far too much time thinking about stationery, okay? And we make our lives pretty difficult for ourselves. We're smart people and we tend to overthink just about everything. But a PhD is created as much by being fit, having great family and friends around you, as it is with being clever. You've got to love your research, love it, and that love and that passion spreads throughout the rest of your life. Because you see, the best PhD students, and indeed often the best researchers, are frequently not the brightest. Like in football, you need a bit more than just brains. You need that intelligence, but you also need to be emotionally attuned and sure, and you also need to be socially aware. You've got to have determination, you've got to have grit, and you've got to have the capacity to plan. Being clever will not get you a PhD. Being clever and resilient will. It's always been one of my popular cultural dreams to wonder what exactly would happen if Bill Shankly had been in a different occupation. What if Bill Shankly had worked for a university? What would have happened? And I've got to thank Michelle for giving me an opportunity to actually work through that virtual history by helping her and helping you think about that productive, strong mindset for your PhD. And next week we're going to work through a clear strategy called compartmentalisation to help you think about the structures and strategies of your life. So as always, I wish you love, light and peace from beautiful Flinders University. Tea out.